being joined by Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford, Watford City native resident, former mayor, if you will, and he recently went out to survey and check out some devastation, some damage that happened out there. My notes say an EF2 tornado that went through there. But Lieutenant Governor, how are you doing today?
A lot better than yesterday, Jason.
Yeah. Let's just get right down to it. This is you were mayor there. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been going through the last few days since you went back there to check on some of the damage.
Well, I woke up to texts and phone calls the other morning. Emergency service coordinator and former county commissioners from back in Watford City saying we had another tornado bad event here in Watford City, worse than what happened 4 years ago. And so immediately my mind flashed back to 4 years ago when the EF2 tornado hit the man camp south of Watford City. And we were lucky to avoid fatalities and a lot of critical injuries on that one. And so here, like deja vu, but they warned me it's a lot worse. And so I asked around the office, Governor agreed I should just cancel my meetings for the day and take off and get out there, and then he would come later in the day when some of his statutory mandatory meetings were done. And so I headed out, and I was expecting, to see campers pulverized and on their tops, and I pulled up to the campground. There was a line of 100 plus vehicles of people waiting to get back in. They had just started letting them back in at noon, and that's about when I pulled in, and Carolyn Jappy, the emergency service coordinator from the state, led me through, and it was unbelievable. So much worse than I would have expected. Total devastation. I mean, these units were flattened. They were pulverized down to 2x4s and pieces of metal, and basically looked like toothpicks in a lot of situations. And I didn't know the numbers yet of how many units, how many people. All I could think of is there used to be thousands of units and 3,000-4,000 people living in those campgrounds in that area. And luckily, there were a few hundred units, a few hundred people displaced, and ended up being 28 people treated for injuries. And I tell you what, it could have been so much worse. It looked awful. It just looked awful. There were many RVs and mobile homes that were destroyed that were unoccupied. But as I was going through the camp, people were coming back, and they were looking through their belongings and looking for their Social Security cards and wallets and whatever they could salvage from the pile of rubble that their RVs and campers had become. And pretty devastating stories, but the good thing is the employers in the area were helping with finding another place to live for a lot of them, and they're very thankful for their jobs, their good pay that would draw them to the state in the first place. They're thankful for the people of Watford City and their response. Citizens were driving through with bags of dog food and dog beds and water and food for these people. It's quite touching, and the Red Cross actually had to turn away more in-kind donations. There was so much water and food and children's clothes and children's toys given at the Civic Center in Watford City. They had to call off the in-kind donations so they could just get people warm and people into the cots in the veterans building and comfortable, fed, hydrated, and then we'll start worrying about where to house them for the night. And so it was quite the ordeal yesterday, and like I said, it could have been a lot worse.
Of course, Watford City, it's in the heart of the Bakken oil boom, and so many of these RV parks and these mobile homes and these campgrounds, they've got families in there. I'm not saying other communities don't, but these energy towns, as well as I do, it's a little bit different of diversity of all different incomes and different cultures and different backgrounds and that sort of thing. So on one hand, it's really nice to hear that the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the sort of fellowship exists out there, people helping each other out, that sort of thing. What was there just a real hodgepodge of people like working out there in the oil and gas industry, or were they primarily lifelong Watford City natives?
Pretty much zero in that second category. I mean, these are folks that have moved in for two different camps really. I mean, there are folks that one of the gentlemen I talked to been there for 8 years, grown to love the community and native of Idaho. A lot of these folks from Idaho, Oregon, Michigan were, sawmill type towns, logging type towns that the economy went away, during the last administration, and they found their way into the oil fields, and they found themselves being, wanted for their truck driving skills on bad roads, and they they love the community. They talk about it's home, it's now home, but they still might have their property back in where they're born in Montana and wherever else in Idaho, and so they'll live in these types of arrangements because there really weren't the mobile home parks set up like you'd have in a center like Bismarck or Minot or the larger communities where you have these organized mobile home parks with curb and gutter, even with pavement, with infrastructure, with a community building, with trees, shelter, parks. I mean, they're looking for those because that as construction workers will go nationwide, they'll follow the work, follow the jobs, and they'll look for seasonal housing. Well, these types of RV parks that are built on just throw a bunch of scoria rock down and then run power to a bunch of spots and rent them out at times for $1,000 a spot, with no cover, with no shelter, with no trees, no landscaping, no playgrounds. I mean, that's kind of where the housing has been for permanent housing for a lot of the population that has moved in. But also, it's a tremendous amount of seasonal where people are coming from the southern parts of the country, coming up from California, from Arizona, from Texas, and working construction jobs with their families. And then when the winter comes, they'd go back home. So yeah, it's not Watford City born and long-term residents in these parks by any means. It's people working in the construction and the roustabout and the midstream side now as well of the energy industry.
That's what I figured. Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford of Lieutenant Governor of North Dakota, former mayor of Watford City, on the line with us. We're talking about the tornado that struck. From my understanding, it's a RV home and that sort of thing. Just a couple questions left here with the Lieutenant Governor, but was it just the RV park? I want to say Sunnyvale, but I know it's not that. But the RV park, or was there other parts of the town impacted at all?
No, it was just that RV park. It was Prairie View RV Park, and it was an area that wasn't an RV park during the oil boom in the late 70s, early 80s, and then an area behind that had been added onto it. So it was a very large park. Thousands of units in there 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and down to hundreds at this point. But yes, it's on the edge of the community. It's in the county. It's actually not annexed into the city. And so, so there's some lack of services there. But yes, one of those areas that's closer to town. It's within a mile of the new Cashwise and hotel and restaurant area there on South Main.
Well, you destroy 122 structures. I don't care if you're 5 miles, 10 miles, or 50 miles outside of town. That's going to have an impact on the economic sociostratus around the area, if you know what I mean. It's just, that changes their lives.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would imagine some people are looking at maybe moving to a different shale play.
Well, what happens is what happened with it 4 years ago was that a number of those 25 families or so that were affected, they just packed up their belongings and left because they were renting one of those units, and they were like, I'm going home. This is enough. Enough of this place. And so you're going to get some of that. And these employers, it's hard fought to retain and attract employees out there. So these employers are going to be working overtime trying to keep these folks around and encouraging them to stay. And some of them had already found another unit to stay in other parts of the county as we were visiting with them as they were looking at their destroyed unit for the first time. So yes, employers will take an active role in trying to keep these employees and find somewhere else for them to live. But we're in a housing crunch in that part of the state again, and it'll stay that way. The housing investors, a lot of them had a tough 4 years, and so they're not going to rush back in. But good news is, I talked to the city administrator this morning. There's we're talking 50 single-family homes to be built in the Watford City area this summer. That's great news. To be completed by next spring. That'll be great news for the energy industry, for the employers in the area, the city, the school, the county that have these large employment needs. That's nothing but good news. That's a big need in that part of the state, and getting people into those permanent accommodations, that helps become long-term residents of the community. So there's still an evolution happening there. But yes, losing that many structures, there's a lot of displaced energy and construction workers that their employers are going to be worried about where they're going to go next.
Well, you just kind of answered the other part then, which is that there are housing, at least if not available, going to be available, so they can Band-aid some things, like you said, sleep on some couches or do whatever you got to do for employers to stretch their own resources to figure out how to make ends meet in the interim for this disaster. But wrapping up here, just kind of next steps. I don't know if there's any, local funds or a fundraiser, or if you get the states doing anything, gonna reach out to, whoever at a federal level. I have no idea, but what's kind of the next steps at this point? We're only, a day or two removed, but is there any chatter or any fundraising type activities?
Well, yeah, there's like, before the fundraising, there's like FEMA, USDA, they all have housing ideas that they want to share with the emergency services coordinators from the county. And so there's a lot of people reaching out. There's all the state agencies are on hold and ready to go with what they've got available. And, we had National Guard and Department of Emergency Services Director General Al Dorman with us yesterday, and basically with what the oil field contractors were offering, with the ability to start cleaning up this morning, it's way faster than trying to mobilize the Guard to come out. So the local response was that you get private sector, you can beat government for responding in an instance like that. And so, some of these things are being handled already. Plus there's GoFundMe account set up for the family of the infant. I mean, we had families, we can't forget, that were critical injuries, really tough injuries still dealing with. And then obviously the couple that lost their 6-day-old infant is the tragedy in this entire story. And there's a GoFundMe account set up for them. Will McGuire is the dad's name. And then there's a GoFundMe account set up with the McKinsey County Emergency Services Director, Carolyn Joppy, at Cornerstone Bank, set up for the victims in its entirety. And last time that there was this tornado event in the community, Lutheran Social Services helped distribute those funds that were gathered on the GoFundMe account for all the victims. And they accumulated and contacted each of the families and distributed out those funds. So there's also a cash account donation available at Cornerstone Bank, plus the GoFundMe account for all the victims, and in the individual GoFundMe account for the parents that lost their infant. So yeah, there's fundraising activities happening as well.
Well, any final thoughts? Anything we left out, I guess, about this?
No, we covered quite a lot. There was quite an outpouring of compassion and helping people pick themselves back up by the bootstraps. And there's now the recovery is in motion as of this morning. And so we hope to get everyone housed and off and running again. And the great thing is about this part of the country is they've got great jobs. One of the people said, "Hey, you can just help me find the hotel room. I got money. I'm not worried about that. I just got to find a place to put my wife and kids tonight, and we'll figure out where we're going to go after that." So I mean, the great jobs are a blessing, and the community's outreach and the employers' outreach, and it makes something positive out of such a scary event, such a devastating event. Because we don't want to have this keep happening. The next stages are also in some fine tuning of the housing structures. What's allowable by law, what areas need to be tightened up a little bit, if any, from the local standpoint, county, city. These type of events help everyone want to refocus and just for us to be better, to provide better services as a government. So we hope there's some improvements coming that way as well.
Lieutenant Governor of North Dakota and former Mayor of Watford City, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.